We love partnering with projects such as deBridge. Alex, welcome, sir. How are you doing today?
Hey guys, hello everyone. Thank you for inviting me today. I'm doing great, even though the market is a bit crazy, as we all know. But yeah, our goal is to build DeFi, right? So that
There we
users and
go.
people don't need to bear any risks of the centralized parties. So we're just on our mission to keep building, and excited to do that together with all of you guys.
100%. That's what we're here to do. That's why we hop on these spaces and we commit all our time to doing this and building that future that we want. Well, yeah, it's such an honor just to have you and representing deBridge as well for this installment of our A&B. We know we're not just talking about traditional interoperability, but all things A&B, different types of message, data contract calls. This is going to be exciting. So I'm going to hand this over to the experts because, as you can see, I'm not a speaker, I'm just a host. So I'm going to hand this over to Arjun and Mark. Once again, welcome, Alex, community. Thanks for being here. Stick around. This is going to be good. Mark, over to you.
Yeah, super excited to have you on, Alex. Just to lay some the framework for anyone who's joining our Arbitrary Messaging Bridges Twitter Spaces for the first time. Arjun and I and the whole LI.FI team published a big research document probably a month or two ago called Navigating Arbitrary Messaging Bridges, which sort of outlined some of the biggest players in the messaging bridge space, such as Layer 0, Wormhole, Nomad, Seller.im, Multichain, and Hyperlane, and of course XLR. We, however, kind of might have missed deBridge on the first go around, so we just amended our document to add deBridge, and so we're having Alex on today to kind of outline what deBridge is, how it works, and have Arjun and I kind of talk about what trust assumptions deBridge might bring onto the bridging space, and have Alex kind of debate with us about that type of thing. So very excited about this. Alex, I think I'm just going to give you the floor to kind of introduce yourself and maybe speak a little bit about deBridge before we kind of get into the specifics.
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Alex. I'm CEO and co-founder at deBridge. I'm a technical person myself. I'm a blockchain developer, and I've been in space since 2016. I started my Web3 career from being an active part of BitShares community, and since 2017, together with another co-founder of deBridge, Yaro, we've been building different blockchain connected solutions and protocols. So yeah, basically we had the blockchain development studio that was called Phenome, and like back at the beginning of the last year, we participated in the hackathon with the idea in the cross-chain interoperability challenge for Web3 space. And yeah, eventually we won the Chain and Global Hackathon, got the first place, and like that's how the story of deBridge started. And originally, like in deBridge, our mission is to provide the secure and reliable generic messaging protocol and a secure interoperability layer for Web3 that enables developers to build powerful cross-chain applications. And like from the very beginning, deBridge provide the ability to pass any information cross-chain and interconnect any smart contracts across different blockchain ecosystems. And this kind of messaging framework can be used to achieve various cross-chain needs. And it enables things such as cross-chain compatibility of smart contracts. When, let's say, a smart contract in one EVM chain can do a cross-chain call this contract in another chain and pass any arbitrary message or like call data. And the messaging framework can also be used to build a cross-chain bridging solutions, like value bridging solutions, or like cross-chain swaps between any liquid assets. And one of the protocols that we've built ourselves is called DSwap. We launched it back in March this year when we partnered up and integrated with OneInch And I think this swap became like the first protocol that enables swap between any liquid asset in one chain to any liquid asset in another. And what we did there, we actually interconnected one and Schroeder smart contracts in different chains through deBridge generic messaging infrastructure. And yeah, in general, there are like so many applications that can be built on top of interoperability infrastructure. That can be, let's say, interoperability and bridging of NFTs, where NFT in one, like from one game, can be used or can have utility in another gamified projects. But yeah, the original like idea is to enable bridging of any arbitrary asset and message simultaneously in one transaction to let users to perform any complex cross-chain interactions in a single transaction, as well as to let developers and projects build any secure and efficient cross-chain applications or cross-chain protocols. Because like the main power of DeFi is composability, right? Where we can combine different DeFi primitives. And like normally we've seen all these DeFi primitives to be combined within one blockchain ecosystems. And now having like secure and reliable cross-chain infrastructure, we can let anyone to combine protocols and DeFi primitives on a cross-chain scale. And that enables way more capital efficient solutions that solves like broader financial problems. Yeah, so that's in a nutshell what we are building in deBridge and like opportunities that our infrastructure enables.
Yeah, I definitely am going to want to dive deeper into some of the use cases being built on top of deBridge. I think there's some really fun stuff that users can do with like gaming and NFTs. I'd love to hear if anyone's building a cross-chain governance protocol on top of deBridge. That's one of my favorite use case that hasn't quite been fleshed out yet in the interop world. But before that, I think we just kind of want to dive a little bit deeper into how deBridge really works. And so you can always correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you guys are live on 7 chains at the moment. And I would maybe love to just hear you outline how outline a transaction lifecycle between 2 chains, as an example, just to give the listeners some background on how deBridge really works and the mechanics of it.
Yeah, absolutely. I will start from explaining what type of bridges like exist in general, and I like to split all the bridges into 2 groups. So the first one is represented by trust minimized bridges or like canonical bridges that normally connect only 2 blockchains. Those are bridges that connect, let's say, Ethereum and rollups, Ethereum Arbitrum or Ethereum Optimism, and like in general, we can build fully trust minimized bridge based on light client or like full client only between blockchain ecosystems. And the reason here is simple. If there is a fork in Ethereum, then we have also fork in rollup, right? And users can easily like pick the right instance. But whenever we have more than 2 supported blockchains, there is no ability to pick fork correctly without having some kind of validation layer. And that's why any interoperability protocols or any bridges that support more than 2 blockchain ecosystems got to have validation layer. And the reason here is simple. Let's say there was a fork of Ethereum. Then we have like Ethereum and Ethereum Classic. And block headers from both of these blockchains will be accepted or will be valid, will be correctly verified by light client or full client. And it all goes down to social consensus about like which fork is correct, which fork is truly supported by like Ethereum community. That's why we need to have validation layer in all the bridging protocols that support more than 2 blockchains ecosystems, because at least we need to correct, like we need to pick which fork was kind of supported by community, and that's why like any interoperability layer has the validation layer, and it's all the matter of how this validation layer is designed. And there are many different approaches, right? There can be optimistic one, or there can be like ZK proofs or succinct proofs, etc. But at the end of the day, we still have validation layer. And our vision in deBridge is that there is no need to chase absolute decentralization here for interoperability protocols, because it's just like mathematically, it cannot be achieved. You still need to have validation. And for us, the main goal here is to provide the best, instead of chasing like absolute decentralization that is never achievable. Our goal is to provide the best financial guarantee and best decentralization time frame where any parties bear risks of the decentralized, of the cross-chain infrastructure. And like in our case, validation layer is represented by validators that are elected by governance and that work for deBridge governance. And in our case, the design is quite unique. We have like fully off-chain validation. That basically means that validators do not need to broadcast any transactions. They just listen for events emitted by the deBridge smart contract and then sign unique identifier of the event and make signature public. And anyone who has at least 2/3 of signatures from validators can execute or deliver message on the destination chain. So by this design, deBridge protocol itself consists of two layers. We have a protocol layer, which is basically represented by deBridge Gate smart contract that is deployed in every blockchain that we support. And then we have a validation layer. That's basically infrastructure layer. That's why bridges are also called like infrastructure. And infrastructure layer is like represented by these 12 validators. The 12 is just like the number of validators that we decided to have to bootstrap the protocol. Moving forward, we'll let governance to decide like how many validators the protocol should have. But yeah, the idea that validators listening to event emitted by deBridge smart contract, and each message that is passing through our protocol is assigned a unique hash or unique identifier, which is basically a hash of all the message parameters. And then validators, as soon as transaction achieves its finality, validators sign the unique identifier and store signature in IPFS. So the goal here is just to make signature public. And there are many ways, like done through centralized API or through IPFS. And now we're also working on integration with bundler protocol, which is based on Arbitrary. And yeah, if there is a way to retrieve like signatures for a specific message, then anyone can execute transaction on the destination chain. Any user or any keeper can deliver this message and execute call data that this message contains. So yeah, this is basically how the life cycle of the message looks like.
Man, I appreciate that clear walkthrough. I think it's a compliment to your system that you can explain it so quickly and succinctly. Just because we've heard some. We read a lot of white papers, and sometimes it gets a little convoluted. But that's a very simple structure at deBridge. One thing that Arjun and I were, talking about internally is that number of 12 validators that you guys chose to launch with at the beginning. You mentioned that you are not quite maximizing for decentralization, but you're pushing for decentralization. That's the goal. But that may, like, true complete trustlessness decentralization might be tough. How did you come up with that number of 12? And like, how much do you think that validator set needs to grow to hit, decentralized enough?
Yeah, that's that's a good question. So the number of 12 was picked based on the number of validators that we had in our testnet last year. We launched our testnet back in November, and the testnet itself, we more than 30 validators, and we just picked 12 based on their performance, like number of missed transactions, based on their uptime and performance within testnet. And we are super satisfied with the performance of deBridge mainnet that we launched back in February, because so far the uptime of our infrastructure is like 100%. There was no any hiccups, and validators like deBridge validators are doing really great. We work with infrastructure providers that run full node of every blockchain that we support alongside the deBridge node. But again, it's important to know that like deBridge is not a blockchain, and we truly believe that the blockchain or additional like chain layer is not really needed for interoperability, because at the end of the day, the consensus is settled on the destination chain anyway, on the chain to which the message is delivered to. And yeah, that's why we don't have a chain, but we have this kind of node that does the off-chain validation. And this design allows to have two big advantages. First, the unlimited throughput, because validators don't need to broadcast any transactions. So they basically can process more transactions than Solana and EVM chains altogether. And second, validators do not need to communicate with each other. So they never expose their infrastructure, or they never open their IP addresses. And that provides like very high level of security of the infrastructure. And in terms of decentralization, yeah, so for now we picked 12 validators. So we bootstrap the protocol by ourselves, but moving forward, we will allow governance to vote and to decide how many validators the protocol should have. And like the question that arises here is like, how do you guarantee that validators will not collude, right? Because like we have 12 validators, and at least 8 signatures are needed to get message delivered. And in order to prevent any collusion, we have a very important module in the protocol design. It's called delegated staking and slashing module. So basically, this module is not live yet. It will be live after we launch the token and pass protocol to governance. But the idea here is that anyone can delegate liquidity to validators in the form of USDC, ETH, and potentially our own token. And if you delegate liquidity to validator, you bear the risk of this validator, but at the same time, you participate in the protocol fee distribution mechanism. And some validators will stake liquidity for themselves to show that they also bear their own financial risks. And user or any on-chain address can stake liquidity for validator as well. And this liquidity is basically a financial guarantee. It's a collateral of validator. If any of the validators are starting to do something wrong, let's say censor transaction or forge the message, they immediately get slashed by governance upon the governance voting, and then replaced by more reliable validator. And that's how the financial guarantee look like. So the idea here is that instead of having, let's say, 100 validators in interoperability protocol with zero financial responsibility, it's better to have 12 validators and $100 million as their collateral, right? Because this 100 million, that's the financial guarantee of anyone who is using the protocol. So let's say if a user transfers value from one chain to another, and he needs to transfer, let's say, 300 million, this user will just split the transaction into 3 parts. Each part is covered by the total collateral of validators. So that's how we see the decentralization here, because like bridges by nature are asynchronous protocols, and we need to let them work asynchronously and to let anyone to bear risk only during the very short time span where settlement happens. That's why we are also like against the continuously locked liquidity model, because we believe that for bridges, liquidity is not needed. It's like liquidity is needed only during the settlement period. And there is no need to have like liquidity pools and continuously locked liquidity in general. So yeah, this is how we see decentralization. So since bridges are asynchronous, we just need to provide the best financial guarantees and best decentralization whenever any parties bear risk of the infrastructure.
That was fascinating. I think that was very important to communicate, because people would in general think that 12 is such a random number, but it's important for them to know that there's like clear thinking and logic behind why you've chosen 12 validators, and like you've taken things like performance, stability, and everything important into consideration. And I think you in the end you mentioned the DLN, right? So maybe you could tell us more about it, how it works, and how it works without locking liquidity. Because in general, every liquidity network right now has to lock liquidity in some form or the other. So how is DLN different?
That's a good question. So DLN is DSwap liquidity network. It's the protocol that we've built on top of deBridge infrastructure that enables cross-chain transfers of value with zero slippage and zero TVL. And basically the transfer is limitless. Any amount of liquidity can be transferred in one transaction. And like originally, all the bridges were built as liquidity protocols, right? Where there are liquidity pools and like users provide asset or liquidity in one chain, and then they get the token from the liquidity pool on the destination chain. So all the transfers are kind of channeled through the shared liquidity pools. And these protocols, this approach has a set of drawbacks. The first one is that there is no way to monetize liquidity efficiently. So whenever bridge is built as liquidity protocol, it got to compete with like purposely built protocols such as Aave, Compound, or Frax. And that's not the competition that bridge is gonna be. Second point here is that in order to retain liquidity, all of the bridges got to run liquidity mining campaigns and distribute token as a reward. And that's why so far there are any profitable bridges, because liquidity mining rewards that are paid like in, I would say 100% exceed the fees that protocols collect. So this model is just not sustainable. And the third point here is that there is no way to predict where the demand for liquidity is coming from. At some day, there can be big amount of transfers to Arbitrum for the say campaign, and the next day there can be a big inflow of liquidity, let's say from Arbitrum to Polygon. So it's quite random. And if you have liquidity pool, way to manage this liquidity efficiently and rebalance liquidity these pools. And moreover, users always bear slippage. So if you do a transfer through a regular bridge or like classical bridge, the best thing that you can do is to specify slippage tolerance. But you never know of asset you will receive on the destination chain. And eventually the transaction can be front run, or there can be like MEV or sandwich attack, and you will receive the amount which is like very to your tolerance that you specified. And like this model has many drawbacks. And the main one, I think, is security, of course, because like all these liquidity pools are honeypots for hackers. And during the last year alone, we've seen more than $2 billion of value that was stolen from different bridging protocols. And at some point, like DSwap V1 that we launched back in March was also based on liquidity pools that we deployed in Curve. And even though we never launched any kind of liquidity mining rewards, but it became very clear that the liquidity model bearing very huge systemic risk, right? If there is any kind of ecosystem level hack, like the one that happened in Binance, then the attacker can just start to withdraw that bad liquidity through all the classical bridges, and LPs of those bridges will be those who end up with bad liquidity at hand. And that's why like this model, or like the way we design value transferring bridges, should be fundamentally changed, or like built like from the first principles. And yeah, in deBridge we are now trying to shift the paradigm from continuously locked liquidity model to liquidity on demand, where instead of using the liquidity pools, all the value is bridged through the liquidity network and transfer between two types of networks, makers and takers. So makers basically those who create the order for cross-chain value transfer. So that can be an order to transfer 1000 USDC in Ethereum for, let's say, 990 USDC in Solana. And as soon as this order is created, like professional market makers, they just like track these orders through the smart contract, and the first one that fulfills the order on the destination chain triggers a message or command that is sent through deBridge infrastructure, and this command basically unlocks liquidity in the source chain to the taker's address. And by this design, there is no locked liquidity. So liquidity is locked only during very short time span where settlement. So maker, the one who makes the transfer, bears the risk only until the transfer is executed. And taker that executes the transfer only bears the risk until the liquidity is unlocked on the source chain. So that's like purely peer-to-peer liquidity network that work asynchronously. And that's like the asynchronous protocol that works on top of asynchronous bridging infrastructure. And to this case, all the risks are fully controlled by the parties, and all the risks are limited. In the worst case scenario, even if something happens with the cross-chain infrastructure, the worst thing that attacker can do is just like to a specific transfer, one specific transaction, instead of like withdrawing liquidity from all the liquidity pools across all the chains. But again, like the security is like the different aspect, and we pay a lot of attention to security. But the cool thing about this design is that user who creates the value transferring order always know the exact amount of asset that he will receive on the destination chain, and the slippage is always zero. I can create, let's say, $50 million order to transfer USDC from Ethereum to Polygon, and the first one who fulfills this order will unlock my liquidity in Ethereum blockchain. And moreover, the professional market makers, or like anyone who settles my order on the destination chain, can join the forces. And let's say one market maker can provide $10 million and another one can provide $40 million. And this makes this system to be very like robust and very secure. I think it's very relevant, especially after all the events that happened during the last week, because like users really have the ability to trade on chain using purely DeFi infrastructure.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead, Arjun.
Yeah, so I think you kind of touched on it already, but maybe explain what's your approach towards security at deBridge? Like, what are the steps you take to ensure funds are always safe? Maybe you can talk about all the different features that you guys have.
Yeah, absolutely. So all the security measures can be divided into two. The first one is like how you approach the development in general, you perform audit of the source code, and so on. And on this front, we like deBridge, I think, is the only protocol or infrastructure that has 17 security audit reports published. And we basically audit every single line of code that we publish into production. And here we have the set of security partners that we are working with. We have the long-term partnership with Halborn. They audit like every single line of code that we make, and that comes not only to the smart contracts, but also to all the services and all the periphery that we have, like UI, web application, APIs, like basically everything, even infrastructure itself, or like Halborn even audited our Cloudflare setup. And we work not only with Halborn. I just would like to use this chance to thank like all the security partners that help to keep the security level of deBridge at the highest level. That's also Aki blockchain, Neodyme, Halborn, and Zokyo. So yeah, we have 4 security audit partners. At the same time, we have the bug bounty program, LI.F at Immunify. And the interesting fact here is that we launched the Immunify bug bounty program even before we launched the protocol. So the Immunify was launched in January and the protocol in the middle of February. We just wanted to give time to like white hat hackers to take additional look into the protocol before we launch it publicly. And yeah, that's what we basically do on the development side, and like in general how we approach the code release. On the other side, there is a set of security measures that is laid into the protocol design itself, because it's very important to have like isolated security model where all blockchains are kind of isolated, and if there is any problem or any vulnerability in one chain, it will not anyhow influence transactions or like general integrations in all the other chains supported by deBridge infrastructure. And one of the security measures that we have here is the non-sequence validation. So what does it mean? Basically, all the messages that are passing through deBridge smart contract are enumerated. They're assigned unique serial number that goes always in the ascending order. And validators must validate all these cross-chain messages in the ascending number as well. So basically, validators kind of check the state of the smart contract with the state of the deBridge node that they run. And if there is any deviation, then validators immediately stop validation. Or if there are any kind of duplicates in the non-sequence, that basically means that there was reorg or there was like some problem with consensus algorithm of the chain, and then validators immediately validation as well until the problem is resolved. And this kind of security measures help to easily detect if there is something wrong with the blockchain itself and immediately post validation for the specific chain. And I think, yeah, the nonce validation is like very important step that like every protocol interoperability layer should have. And another kind of additional security mechanism is the validation of the consistency of the protocols. One of the solutions that we have is called dPort. So that's the protocol built on top of deBridge that allows projects to bridge their asset to another chain to create its synthetic or wrapped representation. And in this case, whenever there is a transfer of wrapped asset through dPort, validators also compare the balance calculated on the smart contract with the balance that was calculated in the deBridge node. Kind of balance sheet validation, basic accountancy. And if there is any deviation here, they also immediately stop or pause the validation for this specific chain. So yeah, these are kind of some of the measures that we have. But I also published some article back in February after one of the major hack where like explained on what set of security measures we have relate into the protocol design itself.
Awesome. I think you mentioned you guys completed 17 audits. So I wanted to ask, like, can you tell us how audits go and why is it so hard to audit bridges? Like, even with the bridges that we've seen that have gotten hacked, even they've had audits, but then there's always something that's missing because moving parts. So maybe you can explain to us what a successful audit looks like for bridges.
Yeah, it's just in bridges there are many attack vectors. It's kind of complex system because for DeFi protocols, your contract within one chain, and you just need to make sure that smart contract is secure, that its logic is secure, that it's initialized correctly. For bridges, it's completely different. You have smart contracts in every chain, then you have the infrastructure, the node, and there is a set of dependencies, right? So you can attack the protocol through the node or using the smart contract logic or using, I don't know, like economical attacks. It's just like the surface of the attack is way broader than the surface for like the regular DeFi protocols. That's why the protocol should be audited, like all the parts, all the modules should pass the thorough review and thorough audit process. And all the hacks that happens during the last, I would say, 2 years can be divided into two groups. The first one is just like the hack that was caused by the lack of decentralization. And that was probably the Ronin one and the Harmony bridge hack. So there was like all the nodes of the bridge itself were just run by one entity or by one company. And the attacker managed to compromise the machine of the DevOps engineer or like one of the admins and managed to get access to the whole infrastructure and sign any message or do any withdrawal. So this is the first type. The second part or the second type of attack vectors is just like vulnerability in the smart contract logic or the problem with like upgradability or initialization of the smart contracts. And for this attack, like this attack was caused by the lack of security audits because it's not enough actually to audit the source code of the smart contract. You've got to audit the initialization scripts, the deployment scripts. Like the one smart contract is deployed, basically the state of the smart contract should be audited as well, just to make sure all the variables were initialized, that there were no any kind of uninitialized slots, etc. And that's like another vector. So yeah, it's just like very complex system. That's why it's very important to have very strict policies in terms of development, in terms of code reviews and audits themselves. The ideal one is like when you develop the code, then you do at least 2 separate audits, or ideally the code for inner challenges as well. And then as the last barrier or last stage is like to launch the bug bounty program on Immunify. So there is no way to prevent like vulnerabilities for like 100%, right? But the goal is to have our process and have many kind of security measures that allows to minimize any potential attack surface, to have the probability to have any vulnerability at like zero level.
Yeah, that is for anyone listening that ever is considering a bridging solution. You should definitely listen to that section again, like on repeat. just because auditing is such an important aspect of this industry. Okay, so Alex, we're like halfway through, or a little bit more than halfway through. So we have like a couple more questions about deBridge specifically, and then we also just want to kind of hop into the interoperable space in general and just kind of talk about that and shoot the breeze there. But before we kind of move into more generalized stuff, I did want to ask when governance, because I was reading through your white paper, and some of the bigger decisions for deBridge going forward, like permissioning the validator set, or I think even slashing decisions are set to go through governance at some point. And I didn't see a date for governance, so I had to ask the question.
Yeah, that's a good question, and yeah, good take about like building bridges, because I like to say there are like two rules. The first rule is never build your own cryptography, and rule number 2 is never build your own bridges. Because bridges are super complex systems, and sometimes people think that like it's very easy, it's just a multi-sig. But in fact, I think that like building interoperability layer or bridge is even like more complicated than building a layer 2 or like building a blockchain itself. But yeah, getting back to your question about the governance. So our goal is to build a DAO, and at some point to pass control of the protocol to governance, so the governance to decide like all the protocol parameters, like how many validators we should have, who should be the validators, and like vote for slashing and like general rotation of validators. But the important thing here is that the path to decentralization should be iterative. There is no way to have like instant decentralization, right? It's just important to iterate, and that works not only for us, like not only for bridges. That's valid like even for any rollups. As you can see, like all the rollups now have centralized sequencer, and like they also take kind of iterative way to improve the decentralization of the protocol. So in our case, like we already have 12 validators, and I think that protocol has really good level of decentralization at this stage. But of course, like at some point, improve this aspect at like slashing, delegated staking, and so on. But like the token should be introduced in the right moment, right? When you already have like the good level of adoption, when there is like a good infrastructure and risks are bigger. So I mean, when the overall like amount of value that is transferred through the infrastructure is quite big. And yeah, we'll see. Just for now we are like fully focused on the security and building the like secure and reliable interoperability layer. And after the launch of DLN, we'll start to think on how we can approach like better decentralization, like what we should do on this front, like, and overall how the overall market sentiment looks like. So yeah, we don't have like specific date yet, but just like step by step, we are moving toward passing control of the protocol to governance.
Awesome. Well, I will certainly be looking forward to that launch date, and I can't wait for DLN. I believe Arjun might have said that more information on DLN is coming out soon, so I hope to read that soon, because I think that could be a big game changer for liquidity networks. So I guess I'm going to ask my favorite question that I get to ask everyone who comes on the Arbitrary Messaging Bridges space. But we hear a lot about one chain to rule them all when it comes to like the EVM world, and I kind of like to take that question and bring it into the bridging industry, which is a lot of these teams we've talked to are they're trying to build the single best solution for bridging between blockchains. And I just wanted to ask you, like, where do you see deBridge fitting in the bridging industry? Do you think this is a one bridge to rule them all type of space, or do you see that there's room for multiple solutions? And then like also, what do you think about what Cosmos is building, way on the other side of the world, because we're kind of in the EVM space, in this Twitter spaces at least.
Yeah, first of all, it all depends on what we assume under the term of bridge, right? Because originally, like, the bridge was the kind of technology or protocol that only allows cross-chain swaps or cross-chain asset transfers. And I think that, like, now it became very clear that there is no way to build value transferring technology without having the messaging layer. The only way to build capital efficient bridge is to build it on top of generic messaging framework. That's why we see now that, like, many of the bridges are kind of pivoting toward the generic messaging protocols. But the way they do this, they initially develop like cross-chain swap solution and then messaging. And that's not how it should work. In deBridge, we had, like, from the very beginning, the generic messaging protocol, and the value transferring bridge was built on top of it. And yeah, so if you talk about like value transferring bridges, then like 100% the competition will be among those who are built on top of generic messaging infrastructure. And for value transferring bridges, the competition is simple. It's like the most capital efficient one will get the biggest traffic. It just like because it can provide the best rates for the end users and for protocols that transfer liquidity cross-chain. And for me, it's like 100% clear that the bridges that are built as liquidity protocols and that have liquidity pools are not in this competition, just because there is no way to monetize that liquidity efficiently. And I think that liquidity network is the one that will kind of dominate this market, simply because there is no need to like launch liquidity mining rewards, like any token incentives and distributions. And that's why like the liquidity networks can provide the best fee for the end users. And let's say with DLN, like any transfer that like protocols or users will perform, we will have 8 BPS fee at maximum. And here 4 BPS goes to the DLN protocol itself, and another 4 goes to taker or to private market maker that fulfilled the order. But at the same time, this fee can be reduced even further. So I can specify the market maker reward to 0, and then I will have to wait for order execution until someone else will need to transfer liquidity in the opposite direction. So it will be matched like between users themselves that want just like to preserve some fees on value transfers. So yeah, my vision is that the like value transferring bridges or bridging space will be dominated by liquidity networks that are built on top of generic messaging infrastructure. But the main business, like the main solution here, is the cross-chain infrastructure itself, right? And that's a B2B business. So we provide the framework, we provide the protocol that allows anyone to build secure and reliable cross-chain applications or cross-chain protocols. And here in deBridge, our main focus is to provide the best set of development tools and the best level of kind of reliability and financial guarantees as well that we discussed earlier. But development tools is just like very important part of it. And we have like the whole set of those. We have DSwap API that allows anyone to easily start building, start like using cross-chain swaps or integrating those into any dApp or any application. We also have SDK, we call it DSDK. So that's basically the software development kit that allows to integrate and start sending messages cross-chain very easily. And the last but not least is the Hardhat plugin. And I think this is quite a unique tool that facilitates the integration. with the cross-chain infrastructure. So basically, developers don't need to broadcast any transactions on the mainnet or even on the testnet. They can easily emulate the infrastructure in a hard hat in their local environment and make sure that everything works as expected before they start to deploy smart contracts in a mainnet. And yeah, at the same time, we have a couple of teams that even moved from some of the competitive solutions just because we provide the better side of development tools, and also because we provide very good technical support. It's just we advise what are the best way to integrate with the infrastructure, what are the best way to design cross-chain protocols, and so on. So yeah, if you're building cross-chain applications or looking for ways to transfer any information cross-chain, try out deBridge, because I think we provide the kind of best experience for the developers that build on top of our infrastructure. And we support these developers in different ways, not only providing the development tools, but also connecting to our investment network, to our partners, and so on. So yeah, our goal is to help projects that build on top of deBridge to get to success. Yeah.
Perfect. And so can you kind of talk about, you're talking about developers are coming onto deBridge and building new tools. Can you kind of talk about the cross-chain applications that you're seeing being built right now on top of deBridge? And then, we'll go two-part question. What you would like to see be built on deBridge in the next 1, 5, even 10 years? Because I think right now we're pretty limited in our mindset of oh, gaming NFTs are a cool idea. But I think extrapolating out to 10 years is a really fun thought experiment that I'd love to hear your thoughts on.
Yeah, there are many applications that are being built. One of the apps that I'm really excited about is the way that the value can be transferred between users. So basically, I can kind of sign the digital signature from my MetaMask wallet and send you the link that you can cash out. So let's say we went to some restaurant and I owe you $100, and then I just sign a check, and you can cash out this check to any wallet on any chain. And deBridge infrastructure is used to transfer value cross-chain. Another interesting use case here is the cross-chain NFTs or interoperability of NFTs. Let's say I have my CryptoPunk, and I want this CryptoPunk to be used in a couple of games simultaneously, in a game on Binance BNB chain, and at the same time in a game on Solana. And there is a team that develops a smart contract where you can lock your NFT in the smart contract in one chain and receive wrapped representations or synthetic representations of the same NFT on multiple chains simultaneously. So you can have your CryptoPunk as a PFP in the metaverse on BNB chain as well as on Star Atlas simultaneously. That's a different use case. Then we also have Kashmir, the team that is building value transferring protocol on top of deBridge that has curve-like economy and allows to bridge value, do cross-chain swaps between chains. Then we have interesting thing that is built related to account abstraction, where through deBridge infrastructure in one transaction, you can deploy Gnosis safe account in all the EVM chains simultaneously. You just send transaction on Polygon and you get your Gnosis safe in Ethereum, Arbitrum, Optimism, everywhere in one transaction. And that's quite interesting. And moreover, the next stage here is that you can have account abstraction. You can control your Gnosis safe account in EVM chain using your wallet in Solana. You can use Phantom wallet. And in this case, you don't need to switch wallets, switch networks. You just send transaction from Solana to the deBridge smart contract there, and deBridge infrastructure automatically executes your transaction in EVM chain through Gnosis Safe account. So and that's like the new approach for account abstraction, where you have safe accounts controlled through messaging from another chain. So yeah, these are kind of some of the use cases that I'm really excited about, but like there are many more, and it's up to developers to kind of improvise and to build unique cross-chain solutions. And now I think it's a good time. It's getting clear that like DeFi is getting more and more relevant, and like even classical capital markets will be gradually moving on chain. And if you're building cross-chain solutions now, I think there is a bigger chance you'll find the product market fit, and like in overall will have a bigger chance to succeed during the next bull cycle that will come anyway. It's just inevitable.
Yeah, those are some really great use cases that you've shared with us here. We know that you guys max out on composability, maxing out on that, really providing the platform for devs to build basically whatever they want in the exchange space. So I'm a big gamer. So just to hear the idea of wrapped NFTs in the GameFi space, it's really good. It's got me really excited. Like I'm really excited over here. But Alex, it's been really great just having you on this space with us. You've shared a lot with us, so much valuable information, and really added value to the space and the series as a whole. Really looking forward to what's to come for deBridge, and really celebrating all that has already happened. It's just been really great. So I just wanted to ask, just before we end off, are there any closing thoughts or questions that maybe you would like to leave with us here in the space today?
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, I would like to thank you guys for preparing this AMB framework and for kind of diving deep into the technical design of deBridge, because I think you're doing a really great job, and like you understood like all the kind of peculiarities of the approach that we are taking. So yeah, big shout out for that. Yeah, maybe I would just like to call to all the developers in this space, or like your listeners, because I think that like cross-chain space or like cross-chain solutions will be one of the main drivers for the general adoption of the DeFi and Web3. And yeah, probably the next bull cycle will be fully or partially driven by the cross-chain protocols as well. So yeah, again, it's a good time to start building. And if you are looking for ways to like implement secure and reliable cross-chain solutions, check out our infrastructure. Or if you're a user that just needs to perform cross-chain swap, you can use DSwap, like one of the solutions that we've built on top of deBridge. And yeah, of course, keep an eye on DLN, DSwap Liquidity Network as well, because I truly believe that this will be kind of a game changer. And I personally will stop using any centralized exchanges as soon as DSwap Liquidity Network is live. And yeah, of course, if you have any kind of professional liquidity managers who do any kind of automated on-chain liquidity management, you can also join DLN in order to fulfill orders coming from users and protocols, because like professional private market makers that will play like this role of taker will have very important role within the deBridge ecosystem. So yeah, thanks for that. Just use this moment to show a bit what we are doing and to kind of call to all the listeners and developers out there.
Yeah, wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Alex. Just once again, yeah, all the best for what's coming up with deBridge in the next couple of quarters. This has been a pleasure from myself and the team, but just for 30 more seconds before we actually cut this off, there has been this great opportunity to claim some epic reward on our Linktree profile. So listeners, if you head to our Discord, you can find the link in our Twitter bio and on our Twitter page, you will see the link to the latest announcement on a reward that you can claim. So this is the first 1,000 concurrent users in the space that stayed on for at least 40 minutes, right? So you can hit link 3, check that out, claim your rewards. But as always, my name's Jordan. This has been a great space. Thank you, Alex, Arjun, and Kram for making this memorable, and community. We'll see you next time. Cheers, guys.
Thank you, guys. Have a good one.